news platform.
Good evening and welcome to the show. It is often said that bribery and corruption is deeply entrenched in the Sri Lankan societal fabric. Now, post-Aragalaya, post-declaring bankruptcy, there was a demand for more conscionable governance. There were the IMF proposed reforms, civil society-backed reforms, one of the key aspects of which was the implementation of the Anti-Corruption Act. Our topic tonight is charting the anti-corruption landscape. I'm pleased to welcome to the studio Piumi Madushani. She functions as Program Manager, Political Sector, Transparency International, Sri Lanka. Good evening and welcome to the show, Piumi.
Good evening, Sonali.
Piumi, when we talk about implementing this Anti-Corruption Act in Sri Lanka, we have to directly tie it to the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption. The Bribery Commission has been given a significant amount of power under this new act, which is great. How must they ensure that they utilize this power to ensure that issues of grand corruption are brought before it?
Yes, so I would like to start with the 2022 People's Movement because there people have been demanding for corruption reforms. When People's Movement occurred, it was because Sri Lanka had hit the biggest economic crisis in the history. For the first time in the history, Sri Lanka had defaulted its debt, and people were suffering and they were unable to fulfill their basic needs. I think there was a clear understanding among people that corruption was one of the main root causes for this issue, and there were clear demands from the citizens to address the issue of corruption through various means such as asset recovery, clean politics, as well as good governance, and also to have more transparent and accountable governance. So to recover from this, what experts, civil society as well as international donor organizations such as IMF have been recommending governance reforms. And if you have a look at the IMF tracker, the Sri Lankan government has made progress up to around 46%. But the real question is whether there is enough political will to sustain these changes. And under these reforms, implementation of the new Anti-Corruption Act comes. So we now have a new anti-corruption law which repeal and replaces the previous Bribery Act, the Commissions Act, as well as the law on asset declarations. So with the new Anti-Corruption Act, the Bribery Commission gets more powers and functions to address the issue of corruption. But the question is whether this will be limited to paper or whether this will be implemented successfully.
How must the Bribery Commission ensure that it adequately utilizes this enhanced power that it has now got under the new Anti-Corruption Act?
According to international standards as well as international conventions such as UNCAC, United Nations Convention Against Corruption, states are required to have a body to prevent and fight against corruption through law enforcement, and this body needs to be independent without undue influence, and also need to have enough capacity and training to fight against corruption. I think at this moment the new appointment to the Commission is critical for two reasons. One, this will be the very first commission appointed under the new law, and there is a huge demand from the public to address the issue of corruption. So the strategy, the anti-corruption strategy of the Bribery Commission can include deterrence, prevention, as well as education. But having prevention and educational initiatives would not be sufficient when there are bigger corruption scandals going on in the country. So they need to respond to those as well. In order to gain public trust, the Bribery Commission needs to act fast and also respond to grand corruption issues going on in the country, and in that way it's part of accountability, and in that way they can gain public trust and partner with public to report and complain on corruption as well.
As you alluded, Justice Neil Iddavala is leading the 3-member commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption, recently appointed commission. Lots of expectations by the public. How must the Bribery Commission now gain public trust? Because the public are a key stakeholder in the anti-corruption framework.
Of course. And if you look at the current context, there are greater corruption issues. There are allegations around health sector procurement, around sports. And in the recent past, Sri Lankans, some of the Sri Lankans' names were mentioned in the Pandora Papers. So there were these scandals, and what are we doing about it? And if you look at the new Anti-Corruption Act, it gives a lot of powers to the Bribery Commission, and now it has the mandate to conduct preliminary inquiries, investigations, and to prosecute against corruption, and also to act as the central authority to control the electronic system established for asset declarations, and also they can collaborate internationally to prevent corruption. And this also expand the scope of work, because new offences such as private sector bribery, sports sector bribery, as well as foreign bribery and so on are included within the scope of bribery and corruption offences. I would also like to highlight the fact that corruption happens secretly, and it requires adequate powers for the Commission to act fast. And if you look at some of the powers given to the Commission under the new Anti-Corruption Act, it has the power to arrest without a warrant. It can use expertise, knowledge, expertise, assistance to carry out investigation, and they can do joint investigations with other investigation agencies. Like that, it has been given a lot of powers, and now it's about how well they will use these powers and function.
Piumi, I'd like to get your perspectives on the deep politicization of processes that that often gets reported in international reports. The IMF has spoken about this as well in its diagnostic governance report, how everything is so politicized and how there is political interference, political manipulation. So how do government agencies act independently when there is thuggery and manipulation and fear-mongering tactics that are used by politicians?
I think that is one of the main challenges an independent commission would face in this context in the country. It also relates to having an enabling environment, because it is a responsibility of the government as well to give the Commission enough space to act independently, especially when it comes to prosecution against high-profile cases and grand corruption. And also they need to be facilitated with the financial resources as well as human resources to address complex and complex issues, because corruptions, especially grand corruption, they can have very complex transactions, and they can involve multiple jurisdictions, and the legal processes could be very lengthy. So in order to overcome all these challenges, the Commission need to have enough independence, and it is part of the responsibility of the government to give that space, and also there needs to be political will for that.
If a Grama Sevaka in some remote part of Sri Lanka takes a bribe of 10,000 rupees to do some task, which he is officially supposed to do, it isn't that arrest that should be making the headlines. Why is there no focus on arresting or bringing before the law those who are guilty of grand corruption?
So if you look at the CBOC website, Bribery Commission's website, you will see a lot of examples, like you said, the public officials getting bribes and then they being convicted. What we do not see is a prosecution against corruption, which is, it seems to be happening not very often. So that is what we are also expecting from the Bribery Commission under the new leadership. Other than their prevention mechanism, other than their educational programs, they need to show deterrence as well through prosecuting high profile cases, and that needs to happen very fast actually.
This conversation surrounding bribery and corruption, we wouldn't be having so frequently, Piumi, if not for our own complicity in letting bribery and corruption and that culture being normalized. Why are we normalizing giving someone 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees? It's because processes don't work. So how do we contribute to this anti-corruption discourse?
That's a very important question, because we need to understand that for the bigger problem of corruption in the country, there's no one solution. By having this anti-corruption law would not itself solve the problem of corruption, and citizens also have a role to play in this. I would also relate this to the whistleblower mechanism, because Sri Lanka lacks a whistleblower mechanism. People would not come forward to report and complain about corruption if they have to risk their occupation or their life. So if we have a good whistleblower mechanism, if that ensures they have safety when it comes to reporting corruption, then we are creating a safe environment for citizens as well to report corruption. And it's citizens' role again to not normalize corruption and bribery, and to proactively report and complain corruption to relevant authorities.
All right, fantastic. We're going for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
The People's Platform. Nava Vasarak, Nava Nayakatwayak, Nava Jayagrahi Gamanak. Sri Lanka Zimbabwe, Ekdina Saha T20 cricket Tarakavaliya. Janawari 6 වෙනිදා සිට 18 වෙනිදා දක්වා පිටිය වටකොට නැගෙන ජයගොස සජීවීව විඳින්න. TV1 නාලිකාව සමග රැඳෙන්න. TV1 TV for life.
Supreme Court declares presidential pardon for Duminda Silva as unlawful. Vegetable prices soar. Agriculture Minister urges people to take up gardening. Government nurses go on strike. Tear gas and water cannons against the IUSF protest. Iran strikes militant bases in Pakistan in the latest Middle East flashpoint.
TV1. TV for life.
So these are the three industries that, very interestingly, the industries that brings in dollars to this country, right? The tea, the garment and the migrant workers.
There was a time when the plantation child was seen as a child who was groomed to be a domestic worker. But then things have really changed.
When one domestic worker migrates, I think an employer pays to almost 800,000 to 1 million rupees for one domestic worker.
Not only participation, becoming politician, but also exercising your voting rights as a citizen of the country.
Creating public awareness is one of the important things that should happen. And then the workers need to be organized, and then facilities given for them to sort of organize themselves and demand for their rights.
Face the Nation, Wednesday nights at 9:30 on TV1.
If the people of this country still opt to vote for the Rajapaksas and the SLPP, then we have very, very little hope.
Sri Lanka has a unique position of being the absolute last in the world in terms of revenue to GDP.
You need to get rid of corruption, then only we can think about at least some rationale in the development of a country.
As a party, we are planning to organize a lot of protest campaign and some meetings and demonstrations, all kind of things from January.
When the purchasing power, what we call the aggregate demand, goes down, it will have a negative impact in the economy as well.
Face to Face, Newsfirst political talk show, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. on TV1.
The People's Platform.
Welcome back. Charting the anti-corruption landscape in Sri Lanka is our topic of discussion tonight. Piumi Madushani joins me. She's the Program Manager for TISL, Transparency International Sri Lanka. Piumi, we're discussing the role of the Bribery Commission in implementing the Anti-Corruption Act, but also talking about the larger questions surrounding being in a culture of bribery and corruption in Sri Lanka. Let's talk about the importance of the Bribery Commission gaining public trust. And in this respect, over in the recent past, we've heard of instances, as reported by media, of several high-profile cases concerning politicians being withdrawn by the Commission. This has caused some kind of concern among the public. Speak to us about this aspect.
Yes, so if you look at the past records in 2021, out of the 69 cases filed by the Bribery Commission, 42 of them have been withdrawn. And in 2022, out of 71 cases that Bribery Commission had filed, 43 had been withdrawn. And the reason reported was mainly due to technical errors, because there was a case in 2019, Anoma Pulavatta case, where in this judgment it mentions for the Bribery Commission to file a case in court, all three signatures need to be there. All three signatures of the commissioners need to be there. And due to this reason, they had to withdraw many of the cases. and unofficially we have heard most of them have been refiled. But the point here is public is not aware of this issue. So the Bribery Commission need to communicate their measures, their actions as well as progress more proactively, and it again connects to the gaining of public trust and the accountability that they need to have.
Right. Now, for the Bribery Commission to do its job properly, it needs to have adequate resources. How important is it for the state to ensure that these resources are adequately allocated, the human resources, the financial allocations, the technical support, all of these things?
Of course. So I would give you the best example. In terms of asset declarations, for the longest time in Sri Lanka, asset declarations have been a secret document. People did not really have open access to asset declarations of politicians or public officials. And with the new anti-corruption law, people can have access to a redacted version of the anti-corruption of the asset declarations through an electronic system established by the government, and Bribery Commission will be the central authority for this. So this is a big system because the number of public officials and politicians that need to submit asset declarations have been expanded. So they will be getting asset declarations from all over the country, and by that time the system need to be in place, which is a complex one which requires a lot of financial obligations as well. So that is one of the means. Asset declarations is one of the means that people can get to know whether their representatives are illicitly enriching. So having access to asset declarations, especially before elections if they are coming, is really important, and this system need to be placed in place soon. So likewise, financial needs are there as well as human resources needs are there, and those need to be addressed by the government as well.
My final question to you, Piumi, is perhaps if a person watching this thinks to themselves, why should I care about whether the Bribery Commission is doing their job? What's it to me? How am I impacted? What's the response you have for them?
Bribery Commission has the sole mandate to fight against corruption and prevent corruption through law enforcement. And you know, people lack trust on law enforcement. They lack trust in the justice system, could be due to delays. So there's a real need for the Bribery Commission to address these concerns. And as citizens, we also have a role to play in the implementation process, especially to not be silent when corruption is happening, and to report corruption to these kind of authorities, and also to follow up and monitor on the implementation of the anti-corruption law, because pressure always needs to be there from the citizens' end as well, and it has a good impact on the implementation process overall.
All right, fantastic. Piumi Madushani, Program Manager, TISL, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.